Our guest today is Andrea Kates, the founder of the Business Genome Project. She's worked with over 250 companies throughout the world, and her client list reads virtually like a who's who in corporate business, from Johnson & Johnson to Shell Oil to Audi Company. And Andrea today is going to talk a little bit about what businesses need to do to start growing once again, because we all know that that's a big issue in our economy today.
The positive side of what's happening in our recession, our economy today, and it's global, and there's a lot of public sentiment about this and the jobs issue, is that there has been a wake-up call. There is no doubt that companies now know that doing nothing is not an option. And that's where I think that this paralysis is starting to break.
Yeah, it's one thing to say doing nothing is not an option, but for business leaders that are watching the program today, the risk of moving too quickly in a down economy also poses a risk. There are reasons that we become paralyzed. We talked about those earlier, about some of those agents as well.
Right.
But I think that what offsets that risk is when you can put together a rational plan that's fact-based.
That's right. And the reason that I think up until now we haven't had a process that was based on this notion of how you can really integrate the art and creativity of innovation with the responsibility of the results that you expect, the science. This is all about metrics, but it's about metrics with a new point of view. So you're not just taking a metric of yesterday, faster, and jump higher, run faster. You're actually very safely taking something that's already succeeding from an adjacent area and implanting it. It's very different from just how many sticky notes can we put on the wall and come up with cool and groovy ideas that actually might be a risk to long-term revenue growth.
Those words, they want to contradict each other. Sustainable innovation.
Yes.
They just want to compete.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the fact that in your world they do not compete. That you and we have living evidence of that. Apple computer, as an example, certainly is a model for sustainable innovation.
Well, if
They
you think
just
about
keep
it,
moving
that's
from
right.
one area to another.
Exactly.
I mean, went from computing to music.
Right.
Right, and that wouldn't have happened unless they'd taken the steps that you talk about in your book. So maybe you could break down the business genome into the elements of it, because I know you talk about 4 different elements of finding that genetic imprint or formula for each company.
Great. So there are 4 steps, but then there's 6 genomes, and I'll go through the 4 steps. I mean, the first thing that you do is, instead of looking at yesterday in the rearview mirror, you look at and instead of looking at your current strengths as the only point, you start by sorting out, okay, reality check, where are we today? And then you say, we have a hunch. And in my viewpoint, a hunch is a very valid scientific moment where you think maybe, for instance, maybe there's an opportunity for us in fractionation. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to go on the road with a road show. Maybe there's an opportunity for us to offer an oil change that doesn't involve just sitting in a darkened garage.
So you suggest that you pay attention to those hunches.
Absolutely, and the early signs of those opportunities are usually sitting right in front of you today. You don't have to wait for a 10-year forecast model to come true. They're sitting right in front of you, and you can piece together what I call a hunch. It's a hypothesis for where you might want to go next. So that's the second thing. Then what you do is you take people who are really doing a good job in any one of those elements, graft it onto your own company, and then you adapt and you focus on what it will take for your company to thrive based on this new information that you're trying to swallow. So that's what you do, and the 6 genomes are really basic to that. The elements that you can look at are very different from the way that we were taught in business school.
And what are those genomes?
So the elements are, just like in Pandora, they have like rock and roll music, or they'll have easy listening, or they'll have ska, different categories of music. The categories that you can use as your levers in business, one is obviously the product and service innovation itself. Another is the customer impact. You can pull that lever. Who's having a great customer impact that you believe can teach your company something. You know, process design. In the days of Six Sigma, it was only about being efficient. There are different ways to take process, like great technology, and really use it in your favor to stand apart from any of your competition. There's a piece that I call secret sauce that is sort of your brand or your mojo, and the way that you can really have a feeling about your company, like an Apple, that transcends any particular sum of the parts, right?
Sort of a cultural, it could be a cultural
It
thing
could be
like Apple
cultural,
Computer,
exactly. It
as
could be
example.
brand, it could be the way that the public perceives you. The other is actually talent and leadership and your culture within the company. You know, what are the people about in your company? And the final one I call trendability, which is, once again, a term that I made up because it's the ability to be ahead of the trends, the ability to shape your future, that actually is a component that you can train your organization to be better at. And those are the 6 components that you can change and resort to really figure out what your next could be.